This is Mark Guerrero, East LA Music Stories, episode number 8. And my guest is my good friend, the writer of the legendary song Hippie Hippie Shake, which has its whole history. We could do a whole show on that one song. But here he is, Mr. Chan Romero. How you doing, Chan?
Hey, we're doing all right. Thank you. How about yourself?
Everything's really cool. The name of the show is East LA Music Stories, but you actually grew up in Billings, Montana, but you have a huge East LA connection, which we'll get to. So how did your family wind up in Billings?
Well, my grandfolks and my folks were working in beet fields. And so that's how we ended up there. They were working in the beet fields.
I see. And where did they come up from?
Mostly, I believe, Colorado.
Okay. And so when you were a kid, you used to run around and wildly barefooted. And tell the story how you got the name Chan, because it ties in.
Oh, yeah. My grandfather, Guerrero, he was from Mexico. He used to get a big kick out of me because I would never wear shoes. I'd run around barefooted, ice and snow, winter, summer. And he would laugh at me and he would say, Chano, Chano, patas de marano, which means a little boy with pig's feet. But that's how I got that name. And thank God for my grandpa de Wedo. I never lost the name.
And so Chano was shortened to Chan.
Yeah.
Now, there's a funny story there because, you know, Chan sounds like a Chinese name.
Yeah.
And one time you were booked up in Canada and you went to the venue and there were all these Chinese people and you came out to sing and they go, what the heck's going on? You know, we thought you were going to be Chinese and they were freaked out. Right? That's what happened, right?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Did they leave or did they stay for the show?
Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. No, they hung out. Stayed for the show.
Oh, that's good. And they wound up digging it?
Yeah, they liked it.
How did you get interested in music and what were your early influences?
Oh, yeah, all my brothers, there's quite a few of them, they all played guitar and sang country music. And so I started plunking away on the guitar and trying to learn a few of those songs that they were doing. And that's how I got interested. And then Elvis came out and he became my big hero. And I started learning Elvis songs like Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel.
Right.
Those good old songs.
And on the countryside, you were digging like Hank Williams and some of those people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Rogers, maybe, those kind of guys.
Yeah. No, country was a big part of our family. Our whole family loved country music.
So I know you started your own little rock band in high school. Did that happen before or after Richie Valens came out?
That happened before. And we started putting a band together. And a couple of my friends, some black brothers, the Williams boys, well, we put a band together called the Belltones. And we started learning, songs of the day, doo-wop and just good old rock and roll songs.
And you played like little dances and high school things and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. We started getting calls and people were wanting to have us come and do some rock and roll doo-wop, good old songs.
And so the next thing for you, wasn't that when Richie Valens came out? And you also dug Buddy Holly, didn't you?
I did a little bit, but Richie was our main source.
And that really got you inspired, right? Especially because he was Chicano.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then the plane crash happened. That must have devastated you.
Yeah, that devastated us. We couldn't hardly believe it.
And were you already writing songs about that time?
Yeah, I was already starting to write. and putting songs together and enjoying rock and roll, good old rock and roll.
And so you made some demos, right? I'm trying to get the order here. If you made the demos and Don Redfield sent them to Bob Keane, Richie Valens, producer and
Yeah,
record company guy, Delphi Records. Did that happen first before you made your trip to East LA, or was your trip to East LA before that?
no, that happened just along the way somewhere.
Tell that story, because that's an incredible story, and that's the first tie into East LA. So you were a teenager, you were still in high school, and you took a trip to East LA. And didn't you go the hard way, transportation wise?
Yeah, I hitchhiked.
And then didn't you hop a freight?
Yeah, and then somewhere on the other side of Las Vegas, I saw a train out in the desert, and I ran for it, got on the train, and man, it was hot out there. If I'd have stayed on that train, I probably would have died.
But the guy saved you, right? The engineer?
Yeah, the engineers saw me and stopped the train and come back there and pulled me off. And he said, "You crazy kid, you're in Death Valley. Don't you realize what goes on out here?" He said, "Get back in the back." So he put me in the conductor's suit that had an ice box and cold water, and he let me give me a little bit of food, and he saved my life pretty well.
Yeah, man, that guy literally saved your life. So then
Yeah.
you rode all the way into LA, right?
Exactly. The
And
train
you,
took me right into East LA.
and you went to stay with your uncle?
Yeah, I stayed with my uncles, my dad's nephews. They were living there, and we were pretty blessed. We were just hit everything just about right.
Did you write Hippie Hippie Shake there?
Actually, I think I wrote "Hippie Hippie Shake" there, and I wrote a lot of songs there. I wrote America, and a lot of good songs.
I know you wrote My Little Ruby there, because wasn't it on that trip that your uncle took you down to Specialty Records?
Yeah,
And you had that
somebody-
song.
right. My uncle Albert, my dad's nephew, he said somebody needs to hear some of these songs. So he said, look in the phone book and see if you can find a record company, which I did, and I got Specialty Records, which was one of my favorite labels. They had Little Richard, and I called, and at that time you could make an appointment, and I made an appointment to see their producer, who was Sonny Bono, who had moved from New York to LA, and he became a record producer for Specialty Records.
But he wasn't famous as an artist yet. He was a producer.
Right, he was a producer.
And so you went in and actually played the songs for him. You sang and played live for him.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And I think you played Hippie Hippie Shake and My Little Ruby and maybe a couple others for him. And his favorite was My Little Ruby, right?
Yeah, he liked My Little Ruby.
And so as I recall, he said, "Hey, these are really good. Why don't you work on them a little while longer and smooth them out and come back," right? Wasn't that it?
Yeah, it's kind of like that happened. Huh?
And so then I think your father called and said, "Hey, you got to get back to school. School's starting." And so you had to leave and you couldn't follow through with that opportunity.
Right, exactly what happened. So he sent a bus ticket, and I was on the bus back on my way back to Billings.
And so it was after that that you recorded some demos in Billings, and this DJ, Don Redfield, really dug them. And this was after Richie's plane crash. He sent those demos to Bob Keane, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And Bob really liked them.
Yeah, Bob liked them so well, he called Don and asked him to send me out. He wanted to record me.
So anyway, you came to LA, and how did you meet Richie Valens' family, his mother and the family?
Yeah, I had my first session with Delphi and Bob Keane, and Bob Keane had called Richie's mother, uh, Connie Valenzuelan. She was up in age, and she came to the record session at Gold Star, and I met her, and she invited me out to the house, wanted me to meet the family, and the rest was, history.
Right. I should mention this for people who don't know, but Bob Keane owned a couple of independent record companies, but Delphi Records was one of them. And he was the one that first recorded Richie Valens, and it was on his label Delphi. And so he was the one that was the guy who released Richie's stuff and La Bamba and Donna and Come On, Let's Go. All those hits happened. And then the plane crash happened. And so because Don Redfield felt that you kind of sounded like Richie Valens and you were Chicano and everything, he sent your tapes to Bob Keane. And so you were winding up kind of going over there to kind of be the heir apparent to Richie Valens.
Yeah.
And when you met his family, his mother had just lost her son, Richie, and she really took to you, right?
Yeah, we got pretty close.
And she invited you to stay at their house.
Yeah, and she told one of the relatives, El Dios me trajo un nitro y me trajo otro. God took my son and brought me another one.
And what was really heavy is here you were this, whatever, a 16-year-old guy, and you admired and, idolized Richie Valens. And now you were sleeping in his bedroom literally months after he had passed in a plane crash.
Yeah, exactly.
And didn't you say that even his guitars were in the room?
What?
His guitar was in the bedroom?
Yeah, he had a couple of guitars, and Connie let me play them. She made them available to me, and which was quite a thrill for me, of course.
How long would you say you stayed with the family?
Let's see, the first time I stayed about a month before I went back to Billings and got married. Married my wife, who I still have now, Laverne, and we had 11 children.
Busy guy.
Yeah.
So was it during your first month stay there that you recorded your 4 songs with Bob?
I think that would be right. Yeah.
So he took you to Gold Star Studios, which was the same studio Richie had recorded his hits in, and he hired virtually the same musicians to back you up.
Exactly.
And that was Earl Palmer on drums, right?
Yeah.
Renee Hall on Dan Electro 6-string bass, which is that famous sound on La Bamba. He played that. And,
Earl Palmer on drums.
Right, I mentioned that already. And was Carol Kay on rhythm guitar?
I believe so.
And Barney Kessel on guitar?
Rhythm guitar.
Okay. And then I looked it up today, and it looked like this guy named Irving Ashby was on upright bass. Do you remember that?
Irvin Ashby, yeah. He was Nat King Cole's bass player.
Right. And you actually didn't have to play guitar on it because you had 2 other guitar players on there, right?
Right. I think that was right.
Yeah. And you recorded the Hippie Hippie Shake, My Little Ruby, I Want Some More?
I don't think I recorded that one yet. I'm not sure.
Well, you think you did the 2 first?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think you eventually cut, was it 2 singles?
Yeah. 2 singles. Hippie Hippie Shake and then My Little Ruby.
Yeah. And the B-sides, wasn't I Want Some More one of the B-sides?
Yeah, I believe it was.
And the other song was the one that we changed later, which we'll talk about. We called it Thrill Me So Much. What was the title of that one?
Yeah, it was.
What was the original title? Do you remember?
No, but it was a ballad. Everybody liked it.
Right. So you recorded the 4 songs, and they were released, and they did okay in the States, but they did much better outside of the United States.
They did really well in England.
In Australia, it was number 3.
Yeah, it hit number 3 in Australia.
And as a result, you went on tour to play in Australia, and you were on the bill with Jerry Lee Lewis.
Exactly. Yeah,
What was that like?
that was pretty nice because, Jerry Lee was one of our heroes.
And from what you had told me before, he was pretty nice and pretty cool with you, right?
Yeah, he was a very good man, very nice guy.
And I think also on the bill was it Tommy Sands?
Who's that?
Tommy Sands?
Tommy Sands, yeah. And there was on the Belmonts,
Wow.
and there was just a lot of good artists.
Was Hal Blaine there playing drums with Tommy Sands? Do you remember
I think
that?
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was.
Man, he wound up being the number 1 studio musician in LA for 60s and 70s.
Right.
So that's pretty amazing, man. So yeah, and I think it did well all over Europe, and it was particularly popular in Liverpool because, the guys that would go out to sea, the merchant seamen would come back with all these American records. They'd gone to New York, they came back, and they bring the records in, and one of them brought Hippie Hippie Shake, and somehow Paul McCartney heard it, and he borrowed the record and he learned it. So the Beatles, there's a noisy freaking truck outside. Hold on. So in Liverpool, in particular, your version of Hippie Hippie Shake was incredibly popular because all the bands were playing it. King Size Taylor and the Dominoes, they eventually recorded it too. All kinds of Liverpool groups, just pretty much all the groups in Liverpool were playing it. And to those musicians in Liverpool in the late 50s, 59, 60, that song was as famous as, any Little Richard or Buddy Holly, or it was just one of the classic rock and roll songs. So you were very popular there, and we'll tell the story how we wound up in Liverpool later. But anyway, so before we finish with Bob Keane, so at some point, Richie Valens' mother kind of warned you that to kind of watch out for Bob Keane, right?
Yeah.
That he was a ladrón, and you couldn't trust him
Where's
business-wise.
El
What?
ladrón, con cuidado con el ladrón.
Right. So that kind of convinced you at some point to decide to leave Bob, right?
Yeah.
And you still had like a couple of years left on your contract. Do you know how many it was?
I don't remember, but it
Was
wasn't.
at least 2 or 3, I think, right?
It could have been, yeah.
But the point is he was not very nice about it in that you couldn't record for anybody else for that whole period.
Right. He had me sewed up.
So what did you do then? Were you just go back to Billings? I know you played around the LA area at some point, and at some point you went to New York.
Yeah.
So what did you do after you left Bob?
I just continued doing my little band thing and writing and carrying on until I got to New York.
And tell me what happened in New York.
And that's when I met some musicians where I recorded. I got into R&B, Humpy Bumpy, and Man Can't Dog a Woman, and in the studio there. And I was offered a job with the band, but my wife and I had become Christians, and so I decided to go back to Billings and raise my family. We had 2 kids there. We had Deborah and Holly, and then the rest was history. We became Christians, and we just decided to go that route.
But while you were in New York, you actually, I guess the Bob Keane time that you couldn't record had passed because you did put out a couple of records when you were in New York.
Yeah.
And was that on the Phillips label? What label was it?
Phillips, yeah.
And you released a Humpy Bumpy and Man Can't Dog a Woman and some couple of really great records. Like you said, they were more R&B influenced.
Yeah, really R&B. Uh-huh.
And your voice had changed because, on the Delphi records, you were like, I think you were 17 when you made the records. You had that little young voice. And and by the time you did the records in New York, you sounded like a little more mature R&B singer. You had a different sound to your voice, and it was more growly, right?
You sound right. That's right.
Yeah, so man, those are
Yeah,
some pretty funky records.
yeah.
Uh, but I guess they didn't do a lot in terms of chart action.
No, but
Didn't they? Mhm.
we was happy with what we were doing.
And didn't you meet some people like, was it like Shadow Stevens and some of those New
Shadow
York song
Morton,
I'm sorry, Shadow Morton and some of
Jeff
those.
Berry, Jeff Berry,
Jeff Berry was a big famous producer. Was
and
he involved? Who?
Alec Greenwich.
And didn't Jeff Berry produce your records there?
Yeah,
Yeah, so you had some big time people and you made some great records, but for whatever reason, nothing happened with that. And then you went back home uh, with your wife and did all that. And you just started playing gigs around. But let's get back to Bob Keane a little before we get too far forward. Um, like Hippie Hippie Shake, it was funny because you came up with that little idea of going like, it kind of sounded like what Michael Jackson did 20 years, 30 years later. You did
yeah.
that little thing. How did you come up with that?
I guess it just was natural.
Just happened, huh?
It just happened.
And we also should talk about what gave you the idea for the song Hippie Hippie Shake. And it had to do with that movie, Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah, yeah. Nancy Kwai.
Nancy Kwan. Nancy Kwan.
She had a little saying, and she would say, "Oh, for goodness sake," she would say it, real Oriental, and that gave me the idea to put that in the song.
So that became "For Goodness Sake."
Yeah,
For goodness sake, turned into that. That's pretty good.
for goodness sake.
That got you rolling on that song. And
Yeah,
what gave you the idea for this idea of hippie hippie shake? You just tried to say that, hey, this could be a new dance craze or something.
I don't remember exactly, but it could have been along that line somewhere.
Yeah. So anyway, so the record became very popular in Liverpool and around all of England, but especially Liverpool. And as we said, number 3 in Australia, it was good in Holland, it got around Europe. But the Liverpool group, the Swingin' Blue Jeans, decided to put it out. They had a major record deal right after the Beatles had their record deal. And they did a version of Hippie Hippie Shake that went to number 2 in England in 1964, I believe. And they had a lot of hits, but that was their biggest hit.
That was their biggest hit. Yeah.
And again, we'll talk about this later, but in 2018, when we went to Liverpool together, we got to meet the leader of the Swingin' Blue Jeans, Ralph Ellis, and we did an event with him. We'll talk about that later, which was full circle. What an incredible thing. So, so now that, after the New York stuff, you were just playing gigs, right? In Canada and Montana. And how did you wind up back in LA? Because you played that place in El Monte. What was it called? You remember?
The 49er.
Yeah. And a lot of people, heavy duty rock people, played there at the time. And you were like, kind of had a house band there or something, didn't you?
Yeah, we were the house band for a long time.
And you hooked up with those guys from, was it Colorado or New Mexico?
Yeah, the Cordova Brothers.
From what I hear, it was a great band. And there's a little story where your band was playing there, and this other band came in, and their guitar player turned out to be Barry Rillera.
Yeah.
And he came in with this little tiny, like a Champ amp and whatever guitar, and your band was looking at him like, what's that? And what's that tiny amp? And he started playing, and everybody goes, holy shit, as you said, get out the diapers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was a heavyweight. And that guy had the blues down pat.
Yeah, so Barry Rillera actually started in a group called the Rhythm Rockers in the late 50s in Orange County. And he wound up being the guitarist for the Righteous Brothers for 20 years, or a long, long time. And
Yeah,
he played with them at the Hollywood Bowl when they opened for the Beatles.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's very Rolero. And his brother Butch, who's a good friend of mine, played drums for a while with the Righteous Brothers. He was on the first album,
yeah,
and he went on to be drummer for Redbone for quite a while.
yeah.
So that's the Rolero brothers. Yeah, and I think the Spiral Staircase used to play there, who eventually had that hit, more today than yesterday. Yeah, I think they used to play at the
Love
40.
you more today than
Yeah,
yesterday. Yeah,
yeah,
that was good. That was a big one.
yeah. So you wound up moving to where we live now, the Palm Springs area, the Coachella
Oh,
Valley. And when did you move here first?
I'm trying to think. Our band was playing with ¿cómo se llama? You remember the guy that did Fever? Ray Peterson. Remember him?
Yeah,
Ray Peterson had the big hit Fever. Yeah, Ray. Yeah, we were his band for a while. We had the same booking agent, and we did a gig in Palm Springs. Of course, when we drove here, everybody falls in love with the place, and we ended up moving here with the family, and we've been here off and on for years.
right. Well, let's talk about the Hippie Hippie Shake before we get too far away from that. I mean, that song has such a history. It's absolutely unbelievable. So the Beatles, as I said, they used to play it around Liverpool. And when they got famous, they used to go to the BBC radio station and they would play live in the studio, and they'd play cover tunes and they play whatever they played,
Yeah,
And they actually recorded Hippie Hippie Shake live at the BBC, and probably like in 63, something like that. And also when the Beatles were in Hamburg, before they were famous,
yeah,
they were playing Hippie Hippie Shake there too, and Paul was singing it.
sure.
But later, like in the 80s, the official album, Beatles Live at the BBC, came out, and a double CD, and your song came out in it, which was huge. I mean, to have it on a Beatle album, that was mighty big for you, and I'm sure it kept your family going for a while.
Yeah,
But that was major. And in 1988, it was in the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise, and the Georgia Satellites recorded a version of it that became a hit once again in
yeah,
1988. So you have all those hit versions of it. It's also been recorded by a bunch of other artists that weren't as big.
right.
And then it wound up in a ton of movies. And I have a list here. Aside from Cocktail, it's been in X-Men, Men Who Stare at Goats, which is a cool movie, Uncle Buck, Austin Powers, Angels in the Outfield, It Takes Two. It's been in some commercials. So the Hippie Hippie Shake has become it's like an industry unto itself.
Sure.
And I'm sure it's helped you survive with your huge family here and there over the years.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and I think it was, let me see when that was. Let me look this up. Yeah. On June 1st, 2008, Paul McCartney played in Liverpool, I think for the first time since the Beatle times when they were young. And so he's playing in Liverpool outdoors there in front of thousands of people on the docks. And the first song he plays is the Hippie Hippie Shake, unbelievable. And you can find that on YouTube. So 2008, Paul was still singing it. So that's quite a compliment to you, man.
We're grateful.
Yes. So let's talk about how we met, okay? Now, this is kind of a funny story. It's a funny story. You were officiating a wedding, right? You became a pastor along the way.
Exactly.
And you marry people, you do weddings, and you were marrying this couple, the Potencios, right? A Native American couple.
Yeah, and the potential family. Yep.
Yeah. And it was at one of the local hotels. And my dad happened to be there as a guest. And
Yeah.
he didn't know who you were, and you didn't know who he was, but you sang a song. Do you remember what song it was?
I
Something
think
about,
Proverbs 18:22. It's he that finds a wife finds a good thing
yes,
and obtains favor from the Lord.
right.
Your dad took a liking to the song, and he said he never heard it before. And I said, no, I did. I wrote it and recorded it. And he said, oh, he said, do you have a business card or anything? Said, yeah. So that's where the trouble started.
That's where our whole trouble started. So you gave my dad the card,
Yeah.
which he immediately lost because he was the kind of guy that would misplace everything. So anyway, he called me up one day and he says, hey, he says, I heard this guy singing over at this wedding and he gave me his card and it was something about Chan. And I said, Chan Romero? And at the time, I didn't know you were living here in town. I had moved here in 1990 full time.
Yeah.
And this was around 1995 or so. And I said, Chan Romero, maybe it's Chan Romero. I said, find the card, because I knew who you were because I'm a huge Beatle fan and I knew their whole history. And so I knew about Hip Hippie Shake. And so I said, find the card. So the next day he found it and he called me up. He gave me your number. I called you, which has led to this, how long? 95, 2005?
Yeah, we've been friends ever since.
27 years. But we wound up in my studio and we started recording together and doing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did was we took your four Delphi records and I put them, at the time I had a Tascam 8-track cassette recorder.
Yeah.
And I put the 2 tracks from those records on there. And then we decided to just add stuff to those records. So I might put a guitar on it. I might put a keyboard on it. You might put a guitar on it. And then we started adding harmonies and we just kind of updated them for fun. But this one that we did came out incredible. And it was that song. And I forgot the original title of it, but it had a different title. But it had the line in it, Thrill Me So Much. So you just kind of retitled it, Thrill Me So Much. But what made it so special was we put all these harmonies on it. We sang I think we sang 2-part harmony, then added a high part, then we doubled it. And it sounded like the Beach Boys, right? I mean, it was this unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you said you liked that better than the original record, right?
Right. It come out terrific.
And we wound up putting that on your, I helped you with some CD you put out, 50s Flashback or something.
Oh, okay.
And we put that on there.
That's 50s Flashback, yeah.
Yeah, so I helped you with a few songs on that. So that's where you started calling me Rock Doc.
Oh, okay.
That's when it was. It was in
I
95.
give you the nickname Rock Doc.
Which you still call me today. I mean, I'll call you up, hey, Chen, hey, Rock Doc. Or if you leave me a voicemail, hey, Rock Doc. So I've been Rock Doc ever since.
Yeah.
And I think you started calling me that for several reasons, but one of them was because we worked together and we did well together. But I was also a pretty decent engineer at the time. I haven't done it now in 20 years. I don't even have a studio now. But I was really good at punching in and all this stuff. And you started saying, don't worry, Rock Doc will take care of it. The Rock Doc will do it.
Exactly.
But but that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool nickname. And since it was bestowed upon me by you, a true rock and roll pioneer, it's very meaningful to me,
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah. And everywhere we go, every interview you do, you go, I call him the Rock Doc.
Yeah.
So you also, and here's the East LA connection again. You knew Billy Cardenas somehow, who was my manager in the 60s and the Premiers and the Blendells and everybody. So many groups he managed.
So many groups.
Yeah. And so I don't know how you met him. Do you remember how you met Billy?
How I met Billy?
Yeah.
Just one of those music meetings, and he started producing some stuff for us. And the Premiers, Farmer John, and we all just started getting together.
Yeah. So he got you together with the original Premiers.
Yeah.
Lawrence and John Perez, Frank Zuniga, and George Delgado.
Yeah.
And you guys went in, and I'm not sure if Frank Zuniga was involved. They might have replaced him already. I think Frank had moved on, but it was the original,
Yeah.
Perez brothers and George Delgado.
So
And
many
you,
people.
and you went in and recorded it was your album backed by the premieres, your songs, your vocals backed by the premieres. Billy put you guys together and he produced the album, and it had some of your great songs like Hot Tamale Man.
Yeah.
And
That's a classic.
and I remember at the time I interviewed you for my internet radio show, and I said, what gave you the idea for that? And why'd you write that song? And you said, well, I figured that those Tamale Men deserved a theme song and thought I'd write it for them. And did you see that like a Tamale Man at Olvera Street or something? And it kind of triggered your.
Yeah, I think I called the guy selling tamales on the street, Hot Tamale Man. So I wrote a tribute to him.
Hot Tamale Man.
Yeah.
Oh God, and there's so many great songs on there. What's the Latin American Man or something like that? Do you remember
Latin
that song?
American music guy. Something.
Latin American Music Man or something. It's another killer song. A lot of great songs. The premieres were playing great. And according to Billy, someone stole the master tape.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So it never came out. Now, one thing I'm grateful for is you happen to have an audio cassette, one of the small audio cassettes of the album, which came off the master, which sounds good, but an audio cassette's never going to sound as good as a 2-track tape that came off.
Yeah.
It came off a 16 or 24 track tape at high speed. That's what records are made from. This was a little audio cassette, but it was clean and it sounded good. And so you gave it to me and I put it on my DAT machine. I digitized it like back in sometime in the late 90s. And so it exists. It exists because of that.
Yeah.
So it's there. And, I think sounds good enough to put out, even though it's not perfect quality, but man, it sounds pretty damn good. And
I believe you're right.
Great songs, great vocals, and the premiere sounded great.
Yes, sir.
So that was that. And then around 2003 or so, you decided to, actually it was 2004, according to this here. You decided to make a record. And I think Billy Cardenas was involved. He was going to produce an album for you. And it was recorded at Little Ray's studio in East LA, Little Ray Jimenez.
Yeah.
Who was a huge star in East LA in the 60s. Great singer, great performer. And he's got a studio called Sanctuary Studios right there, right off of Atlantic Boulevard on Beverly. It might technically be in Montebello, but it's East LA. And the album was done there. And I wrote a song for you for the album called Rockin' Like There's No Tomorrow.
Rockin' Like There's No Tomorrow. I remember that one, boy.
Yeah, and I wrote this really like a Little Richard kind of kick-ass rocker, this fast rocker. Rockin' like there's no tomorrow. Anyway, I knew you could sing the hell out of it, which you did. Holy crap. And I played on that one song. I didn't play on the rest of the album. I played guitar on that song, but I did help on background vocals on a lot of the other songs.
Yeah. Right.
But anyway, on that song, the band was John Perez of the Premiers on drums, Andy Tesso, formerly of the Romancers and the Mixtures, on rhythm guitar. I forgot who the keyboard player was, I'm sorry. And on bass wound up being my friend Leo Valenzuela. And on saxophone, I brought in the great Steve Alanis. And boy, did he do a sax solo on that record.
The heavyweight, yeah.
Yeah. And he played on a bunch of tracks. He played flute, he played sax on about 6 or 7 tracks.
Yes, sir.
And on background vocals, I was really happy about this. You, me, and Little Ray sang 3-part backgrounds, harmonies on several songs. So
Good.
that was a kick, man, the 3 of us singing together.
Yeah, first. We got it together, man.
And we were rocking it with Little Ray.
We were rolling.
So that record finally came out a few years later because I think you and Billy had some kind of a falling out there for a while, and he got sick a little bit. He disappeared, and the rest of the album was finished without him. But it eventually came out, I think like 3 years later. And
Yeah,
it was called On the Right Track.
I think so.
Yeah.
You remember more than I do.
Yeah, well, it's my job. I remember stuff. But it was a really, really good album. And
Yeah,
I don't know if it ever got real distribution. I don't think it did. But it was a hell of a lot of fun to do it.
Canada, I don't know.
Yeah. Talk about your resume, and your song Hip Hippie Shake lives on as a rock and roll standard.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel when you first found out that the Beatles recorded it and you heard their version?
I was pretty amazed because to hear that Paul McCartney had asked the DJ that introduced the record if he could borrow the record, and he learned the song. That was quite a blessing.
And what about when you first heard it? Did it kind of blow you away?
Yeah, it blew me away. I said, wow, whoever this guy is, that I found out later was one of the Beatles. I said, whoa, these guys do it.
Yes, there are not too many people that can say the Beatles recorded their song, and you're one of them.
Yeah, it was pretty big thrill.
Cool, man. So let's talk about our Liverpool trip, okay?
Sure.
So I think I had been to Liverpool twice before. 2004, I played a bunch of gigs. I was on BBC Merseyside with Spencer Lee on the radio. And then I went back in 2006, played a bunch of gigs with Artie and the guys who we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
So I'd been there twice before. I was on the radio both times. I had a lot of contacts there, knew a lot of the musicians from the Beatle era. So anyway, after my two trips, I was very connected there. So every time I'd go, they'd say, oh, Chan Romero, man, God, you were like a huge deal to them. Like I said, you were one of the rock and roll pioneers of their youth. So I knew the guys really wanted you to go to Liverpool, and for years I wanted to get you there. So I called all my friends, and they fixed it up. So we got about 4 gigs, and we went over there, and the band that had been backing me up of the local Liverpool guys, Artie Davies on drums, Richie Ballard on bass, Frank Hopley on keyboard, and George Eccles on rhythm guitar. So, they had backed me up on a couple of trips before. So they got together and we did a bunch of gigs with them at the Cadwa, Mersey Cats, Liverpool Rock and Roll Society. And Spencer Lee of BBC Merseyside, who I'd done a couple of shows with before, he hooked us up with the British Music Experience, which is like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Liverpool. And we had a panel discussion / performance there. We had a great audience, and it was you, me, and Ralph Ellis, Ellis, of the Swingin' Blue Jeans, who had a #2 hit on your song, and you guys had never met. And so he was on the panel with us, and you guys got to meet, and he got to thank you for the song, and you got to thank him for the checks that came in from their hit.
Thank God.
Yeah, and we got to talk and sing, play some songs acoustically, and I backed you on Hip Hippie Shake.
Yeah, it was great. Couldn't be any better.
Yeah, man, it was a great time. People treated you like gold, man. It was like people were thrilled. Not only the local musicians, but the people that showed up were just like thrilled to meet you. And
Exactly, they were great people.
They treated you really well.
Hard to forget people like that.
Treated us all well, but I mean, you were like a huge celebrity.
Yes, sir.
So I was so happy to help get you there because it was so good for them and it was so good for you. It was like, it was turning.
Yeah, you were a main part of getting the thing done.
Yeah, man. So I was really happy to do that. And really gave me a lot of satisfaction to help.
Yes, sir.
Make that happen. And, I got to be in the band backing you up. I got to sing my own songs, rock songs.
We got her done, right?
Yeah. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And of course, our friend and videographer, Tony Reyes, went along with us and documented all the shows. And
Tony was a big special part of it.
And he videoed the panel discussion at the museum. And So all those things are up on YouTube if you look for them, you know. I think we covered it all, man. Like I said, your connection to East LA is your first visits there and writing songs there, Specialty Records, Sonny Bono, and
Yes.
then your relationship with Billy Cardenas, the premieres, and me,
Yeah.
and you know, and you've done a lot of things since with guys from East LA, you know.
Appreciate you putting all that together. You did a whole lot of stuff. You got involved. You was a blessing to the whole thing.
Well, thank you very much, man. And thanks for doing the show, Chan. And you know, I think right now we're living in only what about a mile apart, right? You're still in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're gonna have to go to you know, La Tablita and have some Mexican food.
Boy, they got it going.
I mean, for years we like once a week we'd go to breakfast, and usually it was a Mexican restaurant, right?
Yeah,
I think we hit everyone in the valley here at some point or
I
another.
think so. Yeah, we did it. We got it together. We put it together and we did it.
But unfortunately, since COVID, we haven't been able to get together as much as we used to.
Right.
But we got to start that tradition again, man.
We'll do it.
Okay, man.
Keep
What?
it rocking, rock duck.
I will, man. I do my best. And as you always say, how do you say, stay blessed, right?
Yes, sir. Stay blessed and keep up the good work.
And keep on rocking like there's no tomorrow.
Keep on rocking like there's no tomorrow.
Okay, man. Take care, Chan. Love you.
Rock duck. You too. Take care. Keep on keeping on.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
All right. Good to see you again.